Hello and welcome to Gundry's Guides. To introduce myself, I'm a teaching fellow in biology and wildlife at the University of Salford, as well as a professional wildlife photographer. I run photo workshops on Skåkum Island, puffins and seabirds, and to Flatanger in Norway for white-tailed and golden eagles. Message me for information on any of these trips. The former are usually in June and the latter usually in early January. These videos will be slideshows, mostly slideshows, of shots I've made on a selection of British wildlife, usually but not always concentrated in northwest England. I will explain about the species' biology, ecology and behaviour, as well as explaining how I took these shots, camera settings, the equipment used, and things to be careful of when shooting these subjects. This first video is on the non-parus, i.e. not the tits, passerine perching birds that can be found at sites like Pennington Flash near Wigan. There will be another video devoted to the tits in a week or two, and at some point a third video of in-flight shots of these species, taken recently using the wonderful Nikon Z9. Most of these shots were taken on a Z9 with a 600mm f4 VR lens, handheld or putting the lens on the windowsill of a hide, some of them using 1.4 or 1.7 times teleconverters. The lens without teleconverters has remarkable image resolution. You can see large amounts of feather detail very easily in the shots. Nevertheless, this is also the case with the 1.4 converter, with the difference in image quality being very subtle. And one can still get good feather detail with the 1.7 converter if one stops down to about f9. In biology and wildlife at the University of Salford, we have Canon 90D cameras with Sigma 150-600 lenses that the students can borrow for free. And these can take images nearly as good as my setup, but at a fraction of the cost and half the weight. As always, stopping down a little is recommended, so f8 or f9 is about right on the Sigma 150-600 lens, if light conditions allow. I'm finishing this video on a different day, so apologies if my voice sounds different. When photographing these species, some sort of longish lens is almost essential, as I've already said, and selecting a few autofocus points, about 9, is good, and positioning them over the eye of the bird is another must. This is not easy and takes practice and patience. These birds respond best to artificial feeding in winter when light levels can be poor, especially in the shade. Winter can mean beautiful, flat, angled, golden light too, of course, so make the use of that if the opportunity presents itself. If light levels are poor, then you might struggle to freeze any action at all, and even the bird moving its head may come out blurry. So concentrate on when the bird is entirely still. A combination of a large-ish ISO and stopping down only one stop should give you a chance, unless the light is truly appalling. Back button focus is, as usual, the best option for setting up your shutter button and AF on button. And now, onto the birds. The Bullfinch is a stunning passerine a little larger than a robin. The male's bright chest plumage makes him look like a large ripe plum, and the slate grey back and wings are subtle and lovely. The female replaces the pinky orange with pale brown or buff. It seems to me that the females are more common than the males at Pennington, but one person's anecdotal observations should never carry much, if any, weight. They can be seen in woodlands, orchards and hedgerows, and especially woodland edges, and the UK's breeding population is about 250,000 pairs, inhabiting all of England except a small area east of the Lake District, much of Scotland, but not the Outer Hebrides, Orkney or Shetland, and almost all of Ireland. Their consumption of fruit tree buds can make them a pest in orchards, and for centuries English parishes paid a bounty for every bullfinch killed. I think they may be my favourite of the relatively common UK passerines, as the males are so very splendid. Next we have the chaffinch. This is a widespread bird with a population of 7 million pairs in Britain and Ireland. Again, they're about the size of a robin. They're sexually dimorphic, as you can see, and they tend to only have one brood per year. 5 or so eggs is the norm, and data on British birds shows that 53% of juveniles survive the first year, with about 59% of year-on-year adult survival rate. This means that the average lifespan is only about 3 years, but the oldest ever was 15.5 years old. This is a common and rather lovely British bird. It always was considerably commoner than the smaller greenfinch, although the latter has been hammered by the protozoal parasite Trichomonas gallinae from about 2005 onwards. As a result, the European greenfinch population dropped from about 4.3 to about 2.8 million birds. This is very, very tragic. But in honesty, the chaffinch was always commoner, or in recent decades has always been commoner than the greenfinch. Next is the dunnock, and some of these shots were captured on a beautiful snowy, icy day in midwinter of 2022-23. Another beautiful bird. Looks a bit like a water rail in some ways, or in terms of the coloration, but obviously vastly different size and shape. This bird has a couple of very interesting behavioural traits to bear in mind. One is that it is often polyandrous, which means that the female will mate with several males. Each male, of course, hoping that he has fathered some or all of her eggs and providing some paternal care, even if actually they are not the dad. And another interesting fact about the dunnock is that although it is parasitised by the cuckoo displays no egg mimicry of the dunnock eggs. The dunnock eggs are a beautiful bluey green, almost a kind of baby blue with a little bit of green in them, whereas the cuckoo that parasitises the dunnock has a brown and tan egg. So for whatever reasons, egg mimicry by the common cuckoo of the dunnock has not yet evolved. This may well be because there is not a large amount of eviction by dunnocks of cuckoo eggs, and so without that eviction there is not the selective pressure to evolve egg mimicry by the cuckoo. Found throughout Britain except in a large chunk of the Scottish Highlands, the goldfinch numbers about 1.5 million pairs in the country and used to be very much in demand as a songbird. It's known that if you keep the European goldfinch with domestic canaries, they tend to lose their own song and learn instead the canary's song. This was considered suboptimal because the aim was to have a goldfinch that actually sounded like a goldfinch. And in the 19th century, many thousands of European goldfinches were trapped every year to be sold as cage birds. One of the first campaigns by the RSPB was to prevent this trade. But a beautiful and well-known passerine, unquestionably. Looking like a beautiful blue-grey and orangey buff torpedo, the nuthatch is among the more dominant birds around your typical Manchester bird feeder. They're reasonably willing to bully pretty much anything, and you can get lovely shots of them shooting in and then shooting off the bird table. They do fly in a much more rapid dart-like way than some of the other passerines in this video. Only about 250,000 pairs in Britain, and they don't get any further north than the Scottish borders. Although the range of the Eurasian nuthatch as a whole is everywhere from southern Norway to Japan, to Kamchatka, to Hong Kong, and indeed to Morocco and Turkey, parts of Iran and Iraq as well. So it has an incredibly large global range and a world population in the tens of millions. But really, really beautiful animals. They feed largely on insects, but are very happy to take all sorts of human-created food, including cheese and nuts, and indeed abattoir offal. Supposed to be Britain's favourite bird, although who knows what that means, the European robin is found through about 95% of continental Europe, but not really in much of Asia. A beautiful bird. It is not sexually dimorphic, so males and females look very similar. They sing all year, and in Britain they are drawn to gardeners and to wild boar for similar reasons, because both of these animals will dig up and disturb the earth, from which robins can look out for earthworms and other treats. They're highly aggressive, and in some cases 10% of adult robin deaths are caused by very aggressive territorial disputes. They have very high mortality in the first year, and as a result, average lifespan is only about 13 or 14 months. But once they get to adulthood, they can live considerably longer than that, with the world record being something like 19 years. They look particularly beautiful in the snow, even though it is something of a cliched photo. The last species in today's video is the song thrush, a widespread and beautiful bird found throughout much of Europe and throughout much of Britain, although there are a few parts of Scotland where it's not resident. It's a little bit larger than some of the other birds in this video. Absolutely stunning speckled chest, and as you'd expect from a name like the song thrush, it has a beautiful song. It is well known for gathering snails and then breaking them open on convenient stones. These are sometimes known as anvil stones, although I was lucky enough to watch one for ages in Cambridgeshire, smashing shells open on the edge of a glass bottle that someone had thrown away. The specimens of Sapia nemoralis, the common snail, that have been found around anvil stones have been used to estimate which colour morphs of Sapia nemoralis are most regularly being consumed at any one site and in any one year. So there's a lot of history here as well. The bird has inspired everyone from Robert Browning to Thomas Hardy, Ted Hughes, Edward Thomas, Wordsworth, and indeed West Bromwich Albion Football Club, who have used the bird as their logo. So really, really beautiful animal. This ends the first Gundry's guides. I will try and do them every week, although it might end up every couple of weeks. I don't want to repeat myself and give you all the same photography tips, again and again and again. So it will probably become a little bit more natural history based rather than technique based. But really hope you've enjoyed this, and many thanks for watching.